Well, I don't know if you saw my tweets, but I just finished watching True Detective season 3.
Yeah.
I guess that means you did see the tweet.
Yes, I did, of
Mm,
course.
okay. Otherwise, I would have asked you to guess what I thought. I don't know. Did you? I imagine you would have anticipated my reaction. Had you?
Yes, I did anticipate your reaction. I mean, my reaction was very strong as well. And well, I mean, I guess I was hoping you reacted the same way.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, pretty pretty bad.
Really, really shocking. I was shocked by the end. It was almost. Well, I don't know. I mean, because I I was kind of enjoying it, even though I was becoming more and more aware of the mediocrity of it. But I really didn't expect. Well, I expected the opposite. I expected it would deliver something at the end, at least, to make it worth all of the,
Yeah.
sticking with it. I was not expecting to have the rug pulled out so utterly like that.
Yeah, throughout the series, I found my mind kind of drifting off. But I was with it. I was in it to the end.
Yeah,
And then, yeah, the disappointment, you know, not very far into the final episode.
yeah. That's right.
uh, but also, it was interesting because I do remember, like, midway through the season, thinking, well, I was thinking that this is really a lot of pressure for a writer because now he's with the documentarian character, he's taken the real life Lincoln, Nebraska scandal, the Franklin, not Lincoln, right?
Franklin scandal, yeah.
Franklin cover up. And then also the case in the first season of True Detective.
Yeah.
So the amount of emotional investment that would trigger, be not, true fans of True Detective from season 1, we have that investment, but B, that you're now using real life. And I was also just thinking about how much the world has changed since season 1 in terms of Pizzagate and QAnon and conspiracy becoming mainstream in general, and how loaded that all is now in terms of just like I was thinking, well, whatever the resolution of this season is, the internet's going to go crazy about the significance of it and what does Nick know about real life pedophiles and and then he went the opposite way. It was all just a big misunderstanding, and God is in his house and nothing to see here, which was
well, like audacious in its own way. I mean, not in a good way, but pretty ballsy in a weird way, like to actually set up like that, because there was no reason for him to refer to the Franken scandal. I mean, it didn't need that, except as a nod to what you're saying. Okay, so he's aware of the reality, and now he's going to go into it the way that he failed to in the first 2 seasons, one way or another. In the second one, as you know, I don't feel he did fail there, because I think he went in a way deeper, but there was some sense of disappointment with the party scene and whatnot, that he was going to reveal something and then didn't. But yeah, there was no reason for him to include the real life stuff or a reference to season 1 like that, except as a way to reassure us, or tantalizes that now finally was going to be the big reveal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So then not to do it seemed like a political act. I mean, especially as I've tweeted about with the documentary filmmaking making that really gratuitous spiel about intersectionality, which just tipped us off that she was one of those postmodernist pain in the ass kind of people.
Right. And so you're saying that the final season invalidates her whole. Well, what was her take? I mean, she was invested in that there was.
Yeah. She was the one who brought up the Franklin scandal and brought up season 1, the case of season 1. So she's the one who's saying, yeah, look, this is organized elite pedophiles, and we need to get to the truth of this. Right? So, but then when it turns out that there was none of that going on, it's as if she was just one of those crazy, Pizzagate paranoids, even though postmodernist intersectionality obsessives generally weren't the kind of people who were getting all
That's true.
excited over Pizzagate. So it's pretty
muddy.
It's pretty muddy, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, the whole tone of the last episode was gobsmacking. I mean, one thing if he had somehow managed to come up with a twist whereby, okay, it wasn't that, it was this, it would have still been very disappointing and whatnot. But I suppose theoretically, it seemed like it could have been done in a way that wasn't just a complete betrayal of everything. But just the tone of it was so unconvincing, and so, I mean, there were hints of this, I thought, throughout, the sentimentality of it, but he just went full blown in the last episode.
Yeah.
I mean, really, yeah, it really seemed, I mean, this is my impression throughout, as it was getting progressively worse, really. Although, I mean, it's because there was a lot of good things about it, and it was definitely had its ups and downs, and it was quite ambitious with the 3 timelines, and so did feel like, oh, well, he's trying to do something here, so I was trying to stick with him, even though it was getting hard. I forgot what I was going to say. It'll come back in a second.
Something about the final episode, the tone.
The tone. I was saying that. Yeah, I can't remember. I just have to keep talking and it'll come back. I know what it was. It was I started thinking more and more, well, this is what happens to an artist when they do their best work and they get the shit kicked out of them for it. And because it's too dark, because it's too honest, because it's too raw, they're going to pull back. They're going to be cowed, like a dog that gets whooped or a kid that gets beaten for expressing itself too freely. It's just going to come up with a persona that's safe, right? To make sure it never risks that kind of pain again. That's what I thought I was watching. This is the new reformed, disciplined, corrected Nick Pizzolatto post season 2.
Yes, definitely. And the corrected persona just doesn't ring true. It doesn't feel like he believes in it. There's something fake about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it also feels like he was trying. I feel like he's been trying since season 1 to correct the interpretation of him as sort of, as like a toxically masculine writer, right? He's sort of always trying to show a more vulnerable side and write richer female characters,
And they're female black characters even.
Yeah.
Because the blackness of it was it seemed very, well, not very, but it seemed somewhat inauthentic or ingenuine. Like, oh, yeah, we're going to have black characters, we're going to have a black relationship at the heart of it. And my wife was saying that because she stopped watching it, she was sick, but she also got bored of it. So a combination of those two things, she preferred to watch Time Team. So I was on my own with True Detective. But anyway, afterwards she said that she had got that sense that they were setting up the black character. A lot of it was around his blackness, even though it was fairly subtle, but actually wasn't that subtle, because you got the N-word stuff, like the father who calls him a nigger, not even to his face, and his repentance. My God, oh, I'm so sorry, I used that word, I can't believe I used that word, right? Mm. And then when, what's his name, Stephen Dorff is angry with him, he says, you know what word I'm thinking now?
Yeah, right.
I'm not even going to say the word, just that you know I'm thinking it.
Right.
So belabored. Just the whole racial thing.
And very much like it reads as like a white person's version of what the black experience like, you know.
Yeah, so I think there's a combination thing, isn't there? It's like pulling away from authentic expression, taking refuge in a persona, and then of course the persona has to be ideologically correct. Mm-hmm. And as you say, I mean, the first casualty of that is authenticity or sincerity, and the feeling I got pretty early on, because visually it was strong, but there was no good dialogue, and it wasn't even as though I felt like sometimes a writer gets more mature and they tone down the obviously good dialogue and just, in favor of realism and character, but it wasn't that. It just felt like there wasn't really much high quality writing going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so overall I was feeling like, well, this could almost be an imitation of True Detective. Like, if you didn't know, if I hadn't known, I might have just thought, well, this it was a whole new writer, what do you call the writer's role in TV show, the showrunner, a whole new showrunner. Nick Pizzolatto is no longer involved. They're trying to copy it and they're not doing it right. It had that feeling to me.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think you were right when you said that this season 1 was just kind of lightning in a bottle, and I don't think Nick has a lot to say. I think maybe Nick had one thing to say, and now he's sort of parroting this thing. For me, season 3, the only thing that really like kept me going with it, I really enjoyed watching Mahershala Ali's performance. My favorite moment was he does this amazing thing where the way he's aging in the series, and so he's sort of playing a person at 3 different points in their life. And I thought he did it really well. And there was one scene where it's right after they accidentally kill the guy that they're trying to beat the answers out of, and they accidentally kill him.
Yeah.
And then Mahershala Ali burns his clothes.
Yeah.
And they do that. They did it a few times in the series, which is the 2001 edit where a character ages by the young one seeing the old one.
Right.
That trick that they borrowed from that. What I liked about that scene was the older character is kind of walking through the darkness and sees the younger character burning his clothes. And then the character burning his clothes hears something and looks back to see him. And it's the first time that you see on the younger character's face the expression of fear that's on the older man's face constantly. Like that expression of fear never leaves the older character's face, but it's the first time that you see the young one making that face. I thought that was a brilliant bit of acting, you know?
Hmm. Well, that's a good observation. I didn't observe that, and I was aware throughout. As I say, it was very ambitious in certain ways, the timelines and the development of character and so on. Even though I didn't really feel that the main character was that three-dimensional, but I just felt as though it was I was seeing intentions and not results mostly.
Sure.
Like really, ambitious and good and creative and profound intentions, but they also felt self-conscious and like like Pizzolatto had his fingers crossed behind his back, that people would
Not
no,
notice.
not notice that his heart wasn't in it, and he wasn't really doing the necessary work to make it real. It was a draft. It was like a rough draft of of a profound exploration of the human soul, which is what he's been promising to deliver, like what people felt they got with the first one, what people felt they didn't get with the second one, even though I felt that he did deliver it much more fully with the second one. But as I say, in a way that people didn't want to see it. Uh, and so, yeah, with this last one, it just felt like he was going through the motions, like paint by numbers sort of thing. I could see a lot of the things he was trying to communicate and the meanings that were supposedly in there, but it didn't resonate for me. I didn't find any of it moving, hardly at all. I think there was the guy, the white guy and his dogs, and there's something around there when he goes to get beaten up in the bar and his loneliness. I felt some poignancy around that. The central relationship, with the black guy and his wife, which clearly was central, like the whole thing centered around that, just didn't really do it for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty disappointing. But yeah, I mean, like I actually, I was screaming at the TV after the reveal,
Oh, yeah.
like 20 or 30 minutes in, and then the next 20 or 30 minutes, where do you go from there? Like you
It
just.
went from bad to worse. Yeah, I was pleased by that point, because I think, okay, if it's going to be bad, please let it be really, really bad, so that there won't be too many people out there who haven't, who are like, I was feeling like tweeting something like, the most depressing thing about the world that I can think of right now is that there are people out there who think that season 3 of True Detective is better than season 2. I didn't tweet that because I'm trying to soften my opinions and not get all tangled up in stuff that doesn't really matter.
Right.
But it's so disorienting or disturbing that, as we've talked about before, that feeling of disconnect from other people's perceptions and then potentially the collective perception. There was almost a collective agreement, consensus that True Detective season 2 were failed. And fortunately, people that I interact with don't seem to feel that way. So there are enough people out there who make me not feel completely alone. And I had picked up a little bit about season 3. I thought that people were saying, oh, it's pretty good, and certainly people were saying, oh well, it's a comeback after season 2. So yeah, so by the time I was watching the last episode, I was thinking, it cannot be that people are actually saying that this is a superior work to the second season.
Well, my read of the reaction, just from on the online sample,
Yeah.
was that everybody was excited about it at the beginning of the season, and then I noticed after the season finale, it was almost as if nobody had seen it, because I didn't notice any reaction. So I don't know. My reading is that it was a pretty lukewarm return.
Of course, the main director, Jeffrey Saltiel, how you pronounce his name, they had a disagreement and he quit halfway through. And there definitely was a drop-off in directorial quality, I think, in the later episodes. So there's that, whatever happened there. But you would think, I would have thought that, considering how vocal people were with their distaste for season 2, that you would have had some people vocalizing their disappointment with the finale of season 3. I would have expected that.
Yeah.
But maybe they just felt so, discouraged and disenchanted by them they couldn't even find the energy to tweet about it.
Could be a lot of people didn't make it to the end,
Mm.
Yeah, I am surprised that there wasn't more. Maybe it's taboo to dislike a happy ending. Maybe you're not allowed to say that you disagreed with the happy ending. Could be that too.
Yeah, I don't know. Is that possible?
Because what are you saying then? You're saying, no, that little girl should have been sex trafficked, and like.
It's funny. I watched the True Detective in tandem with watching the Netflix documentary on Madeleine McCann. Which I haven't watched the last episode now, but there's 8 hours of it, 8 episodes. I watched all of them yesterday, so that's how ill I was. And that, of course, that doesn't have a solution either.
Fill me in. What's the story of that? I don't
know. I'm surprised you don't know, because it was so huge. It was a 3-year-old girl with a British family in the Algarve in Portugal on holiday. She went missing from a hotel room and seemed like she'd been abducted. At a certain point, the Portuguese police turned it around and blamed the parents, or tried to say there was evidence that the parents had killed her accidentally and got rid of the body, but that wasn't very convincing. It seemed more like damage control on the part of the police and/or a cover-up. But the documentary is similar in certain ways, because there are references here and there to, high-level pedophile and child trafficking and stuff, and a lot more seriously, because of course people, you have to seriously consider this in this case of a 3-year-old gone missing, but there isn't any solution. So it's also kind of vacillating between, staring in the face of the likely possibilities and skirting over it, or circumnavigating it. And there's also that sort of weird conflict watching it in wanting, somehow feeling as though I want it to turn out to be the worst, even though of course that's a terrible thing to want to happen to anyone. I mean, the whole point is it's so awful, but you want the truth to come out about it because of how awful it is. But then that can seem like you're actually wanting it to be true when it might not be true, and that makes you an awful person. Like there's a lot of confusion around that.
Sure.
In myself, certainly. And there are dark layers to that, as you know. You've read Seen and Not Seen. There's a part of me that wants to be true for awful reasons, that is complicit with it. But there's a larger part that simply wants the truth to come out and suspects that this is the most likely explanation for it. In the case of True Detective, well, I mean, how many times does a girl go missing in a small town when there's a conspiracy involved, and it's some weird kooky family who the mother went crazy and just thought, I want another daughter, as compared to it's organized child trafficking, right? It's ridiculous. It just seems kind of openly disingenuous, if not, well, certainly irresponsible, to push a narrative like that, in the world that we live in. And then to do it in the context of, yeah, well, this is what it looks like. It looks like organized child trafficking, but no, it's just this.
Yeah. Yeah, it was all just a big psych out, a big fake out.
And it's a happy ending for, well, not for everyone. There's all these casualties, but for the daughter herself, and
Right.
that was so unbelievably. I just can't believe it. Actually, the whole thing with the boy who loved her as a schoolboy, who recognized her as an adult, and they found each other, and the nuns. It's just, I mean, really, if Spielberg had done that, he wouldn't have got away with it.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's got to be some sort of joke. You expect the dissolve at the end, and no, this is all dissociative fantasy.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, it's like some kind of acrobatics that the character with Alzheimer's had in his head. Yeah, that's true. It's interesting that we're kind of coming upon that. Because I was thinking earlier when I saw your tweet, I was thinking like, it really is a lose-lose situation because, I mean, you're calling this ending irresponsible, and I agree. And then I also think, well, is it responsible to drum up people's fears of underground pedophilia rings and powerful places, powerful people, when that's already such a hot internet world of fear and like what good is it to fictionalize a story about that and sort of fan the flames there? Is that responsible?
Yeah, that's right. I agree absolutely. But I mean, this is where I don't agree with what you're saying about season 1 being a flash in the pan, and that was all he had in him. Because I feel that with season 2, he was attempting the third way that that would be responsible, which is you don't focus on the crime, you don't focus on the sensationalism and the horror and the perversity, you focus on the trauma and how damaged these people are and how just fucking sordid and depressing it all is.
Because he's focusing on characters who are survivors.
Yeah, and who are barely survivors, and they don't survive in the end because they're so dysfunctional and so cut off from the reality. And the organized malevolence behind the scenes, they never even see it because you can't. If you get that close enough, you're destroyed, and that's the end of it. And they're destroyed, by their proximity to it, and they're literally destroyed as they get closer to it. So there is the sense, yes, it's acknowledging that reality, but you're seeing the effects because you can't ever really see the causes, and you certainly can't show them or fictionalize them without reducing them to something asinine and irresponsible. So I felt, I mean, I would have to watch it again because I did only watch that season once. So it could have been that somehow I misjudged or something, but I certainly felt at the time that he'd done something really, really unusual, as in he'd really reached inside himself and he'd pulled out internal organs and just been willing to actually try and communicate something really, really personal. That was what I felt after I'd seen season 2. But obviously I have to wonder with the evidence of season 3 and even one of the interviews I've heard with Pizzolatto, he doesn't seem like a really, really deep, soulful person. So I don't know what happened there, but
yeah. Well, I definitely agree that he was trying. Season 2 was trying to do something different, and season 3 was like a trying to return to something that it's back to like, is it more honorable to chart new territory and fail than to fall back on try to do the old thing and end up just kind of being a parody of yourself,
Yeah, well, and I mean, to the extent that he, as a writer artist, was invested in his work and the reception it got, he would have been very inspired by season one, how it lifted him up to the highest pinnacles of culture makers, and then really crushed by the reception to season two. And I mean, I tried to contact the guy after that, obviously, because I wanted to, because I was fanning myself, whatever, but also because it's impossible to separate the two things. Being a fan with actually wanting to offer support to somebody that one doesn't really know. But like, I could see the flack he was getting for doing something that might have been his best work, and the possible consequences of that. And so I wanted to try and leaven that by saying, look, somebody is getting it, and they're really getting something from it that maybe even you are not aware is in there, to try and naively help prevent what did happen, which is, as I say, he got burned and he backs away from the fire, and then he comes back covered with asbestos clothing to make sure he doesn't get burned again. And there's no soul there, there's no heart, soul, there's no vulnerability, there's nothing. There's just this attempt to somehow restore his reputation, which is manifestly insincere, or I mean, it's the opposite of creative artistic self-expression, which has to play second any kind of audience response. You can't be going into your inner spaces to see what's there if you're thinking, well, what will people say?
Yeah.
So he didn't. He clearly didn't. He wanted to rescue the series, it seems, because it seemed like there wasn't going to be a season 3, and then suddenly, there is, and then the main thing is it going to be better than season 2?
Yeah. I thought for a while, when they were bringing in the Rust Cole Marty Hart case, I thought, they're setting up the season 4 return.
Right.
It's like the superhero movie where in the last scene, you get a cameo from Wolverine, and he's showing up. He's going to be in the next thing,
Yeah.
But
well, he was going to do, before this, it was announced he was doing a reboot of Perry Mason with Robert Downey Jr. So yeah, it's getting pretty close to Marvel superhero shit. And he also wrote the Magnificent Seven remake, which was a complete pile of horse shit.
Right.
So you have to wonder, I mean, this is a recurring question, isn't it, throughout our explorations of culture and whatnot, is, how easy is it to fake art? And, and what else can we conclude if we see somebody who apparently did a work of art goes on to do a work of, calculated, cynical corporate horse manure? Clearly they're not an artist if they're doing that. So then how could they have been an artist back when they were supposedly,
Yeah, I've sort of, there are so many factors there, like people get possessed by genius and then genius leaves them. It happens all the time.
In theory, yeah, we don't know what that is, though.
It's a certain time and a certain place. It happens all the time with music, because a band will come out of a certain scene and a right group of people at the right time. And it's very hard for them to recapture, or, there are some people who they grow and they evolve, and there's a lot going on there that they can sort of plumb the depths of the self and keep evolving. But sometimes this stuff's pretty magic,
Well, yeah, I agree that things have to line up in such a way, but the one thing that's absolute prerequisite is the willingness to be uncompromising and honest in the midst of that process. Because as soon as you're second guessing and thinking, what's going to work and what's going to make money and what's going to make me famous, then it's not happening. yes, it's a spectrum, but on my own trajectory so far, it seems pretty clear to me that the more I've been able to let go of the kind of calculating, conniving attempt to control language and use language or whatever it is as a way to make myself powerful and safe and famous and successful and all that stuff, the more I've been able to let go of that, the more some deep transmission has been able to come through, you know, reducing the noise, intensifying the signal. Um, and
Yeah.
yeah, and then I know it doesn't mean I won't lose it again, I suppose, but
Yeah.